Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Judge Mathas episode. God, that feels good to say. This is the first episode after I lost my friend John to cancer. And I just wanted to do a comedy bit to open this up, and I had some ideas, but I felt it more prudent to just dedicate this episode to him. For many reasons, I don't think Judge Mathas would exist without him. He was one of the reasons I started, and he was one of the ones that said what I was doing was good work. So I just didn't feel it prudent to do an opening sketch. Instead, this one goes out to you, John. You were a secret weeb, just like the rest of us. And as much as you loved games with great gameplay, you had a soft spot for trash games. And that's kind of what today is all about. So, without further ado, let's get into the next episode. So there I am, playing David Cage's latest master. Playing his latest master. So there I am, playing David Cage's latest game, Detroit Become Human, when two very distinct urges washed over me. The first, and most important, was to stream the entire game so I could openly mock how terrible the writing was in a comedic fashion, while also still venting about how bad the writing was in a cathartic way. What am I ripping off? Oh, the side of my head that shows that I'm an android? That could just come off? Just take it off then! Why is that just something that's kind of latched in there? Why is that something that is just there that he can pop off and it doesn't affect anything? Why doesn't all androids who are deviants just pop it out? The second urge was to do a Judge Mathas about it. And I almost did. But that'll have to be for an entirely different day, because I kind of decided I want to play each David Cage game in chronological order and give each one its own video here on the Judge Mathas channel. So instead, I went and played a different QTE story-driven game with terrible writing that I thoroughly enjoyed, to try and figure out why David's terrible plot didn't ring nearly as well as this one. Put on your weed pants, everyone. It's time for Asura's Wrath. Right at the top, let me just say that I really like Asura's Wrath. It's just incredibly fun with all the powering up and flying around the skies and energy beams and 6 arms and a bunch of other things flying around that you pick up and you throw at other bad guys, and then no matter how much I like it, I still realize that Asura's Wrath is horribly written. It's poorly paced, chaotic, obtuse for the sake of it, and really, really stupid. In a good way. So why do I enjoy it so much? I mean, it really isn't much other than a game about punching dudes and watching their faces in slow-mo accept the punch and absorb it, and then they snap back into real time and the enemy goes flying, and then they hit a mountainside and a puff-up round of smoke hits. Bam! You punch him and he goes flying and you chase him, and then you just punch him a bunch more, and then you fire a giant energy thing at him, and then you rip him in half, and it's just a lot of fun. Asura's Wrath is simply a revenge tale. You play as Asura, one of 8 mystical generals tasked with saving the planet Gaia from a terrible and evil force known as Goma. Asura's other 7 mystical general friends are Goron Made Human, Kefka, Inuyasha, Cliché Tinkering Old Man, Military Woman, Rotund McLargefist, and the leader of them all, Ganondorf. The Goma, far as I can tell, make all the wildlife really angry and give them thick red vein disease. Coincidentally, that's also the disease I give myself every day around 4 p.m. if you know what I'm saying. And the 8 mystical generals serve an emperor, and their task is to keep humanity safe and cleansed of the Goma. Then, wouldn't you know it, the emperor is murdered by Ganondorf, Asura is framed for it, his wife is murdered, and his daughter is kidnapped because she has praying powers, which give all the other generals bolstered abilities. From here on out, Asura is on a path of vengeance to kill the generals for being lying, backstabbing meanies, and to save his daughter from praying too hard. He'll scream a lot, punch a lot more than he screams, and stand stoically for the rest of it, barely saying much beyond a sentence or two. The gameplay is equally as simplistic as the story. It's a whole lot of QTE timing and observing as the story unfolds before you with some occasional, albeit simple, third-person action segments. The difference between a game like Asura's Wrath and, say, Detroit Become Human isn't the writing. It's how it handles its writing. Where Detroit pretends to be this deep, thought-provoking masterpiece with symbolism, metaphor, and nuance told through subtlety, while shouting at you that it's trying to remain grounded in reality and seriousness, while in the same breath telling you all about this one character who goes through beat by beat the story of Jesus Christ from the Bible and his magic touching ability. Asura's Wrath embraces what it is from the start. Straight, hilarious, testosterone-filled anime nonsense. Seriously, somebody needs to just get David Cage and tell him no when he's writing. Just somebody tell him no.
And maybe a mankind that lost that sense of what it really means to be human.
That could just come on. And that's exactly what Asura's Wrath is. Anime nonsense. It is even presented like an anime. The game is divided up into 18 chapters, 22 with the DLC. Each one takes about 20 minutes or so to complete, give or take, and is introduced with a quick recap of previous events and ends with a freeze frame and a to be continued in the bottom corner. Asura's Wrath is an interactive anime, and while the QTEs, even upon failing them, rarely matters much outside of some minor animation differences, the ride Asura's Wrath takes you on is worth it if you're into heavy action with threadbare story supporting all the ass kicking you're doing throughout. It's spectacle after spectacle after spectacle, and that's all it really wants to be. This is why I enjoyed it so much, because it wasn't ashamed of what it was, nor did it attempt to overcomplicate anything. It whisked me away back into my teenage days where Dragon Ball Z was my numero uno show of choice, and all I wanted was the next big fight between our heroes and the villain. It's junk food for your brain that isn't parading around as filet mignon. God damn it, David. And yeah, while the voice acting in the game is, let's say, decent at best, this game is a visual treat even still. It has this mix of cell shading and painting effect layered over it that reminded me heavily of Street Fighter 4 and 5. Each shot is gorgeous and the animations are fluid and, most importantly, impactful. Enemies will go flying over and over and over again as you just punch the ever-living shit out of them. It's just the most weeb thing I've played in years, and I loved it. Unfortunately, it's almost also entirely a spectacle. As I said before, gameplay here is pretty minimal. It is much more of an interactive anime than, say, a choose-your-own-adventure. Interaction can be boiled down into two simple gameplay loops. The game will open up an episode with Asura heading toward the next fight he wants to get into, but before he does, he'll have to fight some throwaway Goma. This is where that action part I spoke of in the past comes around. You're plopped into a tiny little arena, enemies surround you, and it's up to you to light and heavy attack your way through them until they all die. You have a dodge and jump ability as well, but for the most part, just punching your way through the trash tends to work fine. The camera can be a little janky and the lock-on system is not as reliable as I would like it to be, but the game is also relatively easy, and it didn't cause me to die more than a couple of times throughout my whole playthrough. You also have a ranged attack that you can use, but won't unless you're fighting some flying enemies that you need to take care of and are out of your reach. While you fight, you'll build up two separate meters. The one right below your health, which is a red bar, and one below that, which is a bunch of smaller white bars. When the white bars fill up, you'll have infinite heavy attacks, since heavy attacks have a small cooldown normally, and when the red bar fills up, which is called your burst meter, you'll do this huge cinematic super move where you'll have to do one or two quick and easy QTEs. A spectacle takes place, it looks amazing, and then you move on. The burst meter is a lot less important with the throwaway Goma though, and more important for boss fights. I actually found it a lot better to think of the burst meter less as a meter and more of a filling boss health bar. The boss doesn't go down until you're able to use your burst meter and successfully finish him off properly with that crazy fun to watch cinematic and performing some QTEs. And that's about it. That's kind of the extent of Asura's Wrath's gameplay. There's no branching narratives, except a secret ending where you need to hit, I believe, S rank on all the levels. And there's no morally ambiguous decisions to make. You're angry, you've been betrayed, go get your revenge. And to the game's credit, while it does lavish and savor its ludicrous power fantasy, it does occasionally attempt some more serious moments while trying to humanize Asura.
Thanks.
And surprisingly, some of the villains. But the only one that really stuck with me was a boss fight where the music was more somber due to who you were fighting in it and less adrenaline pumping. Otherwise, for me anyway, they mostly fell flat. You never really spend any meaningful time with these characters, so growing attached was nearly impossible for me personally. But damn if I didn't love seeing Asura beat them all into the ground over and over again. Behind the sloppy story and shallow gameplay, there's also an interesting world at play, I have to admit. The sci-fi mixed with Japanese mythology is visually crazy and beautiful, and there's enough tidbits of lore and information dropped that did make me want to know more. But it's never really explored beyond surface motivations by our characters. And that's okay. Though if a crazy sequel ever did leak out of Capcom eventually, I'd love to see more of this world in particular with more attention paid to its setting. It's a short, about 6 to 8 hours, fun, adrenaline-filled action romp through a visually gorgeous world with simple characters and a lot of flying fists. When it launched in 2012, it was a full $60 title. And before it had even been released to consumers, we had been told that the real ending and extra episodes would be coming as DLC in the very near future, putting an instant bad taste in people's mouths. It felt like a cash grab and a weird move to put on a game that wasn't going to ever hit mainstream success or a mainstream audience, whittling down what I can only assume was already a pretty small niche audience for this game. But now you can get it on the cheap, DLC and all. And if you know what you're getting into, Asura's Wrath is absolutely worth the price of admission. This game only maxed at 720p when it launched, and I can't help but drool thinking about how good another game in this series with this visual style would look today. Asura's Wrath is shallow in terms of character development and gameplay and interactivity. It is a cheap kind of entertainment and a story of revenge that you have undoubtedly heard many times over. But the unique Asura's Wrath flavor that they layer over a relatively cliche story, the gorgeous visuals even this many years on, and the fun spectacle after spectacle after spectacle that they put in front of you couldn't help but have me drooling and chomping at the bit for the next big fight scene. But you have to play the game with the DLC. And I don't even know if you can play the game without the DLC anymore, but you must, because without it, the vanilla game doesn't end in a satisfying way. The extra chapters that they ended up selling as a separate thing later really fills in the gaps and gives you a satisfying conclusion. But as long as you know what you're getting into, and you are game for a cheesy little shonen revenge tale, you should absolutely check out Asura's Wrath. And you can play it on the PlayStation Now service on the PS4. It's worth checking out even if that's the only way you can play it. But with that all in mind, I, the Honorable Judge Mathas, judge this game as guilty. Guilty for being a cheese fest, and also guilty for trying to pinch pennies and squeeze more out of the consumer when it first launched. But it doesn't stop it from being enjoyable. So I wholeheartedly recommend checking out Asura's Wrath. My question to you is simple. Give me your favorite fast food video game. One that is obviously meant to just be kind of cheesy and fun and not really provoke any thought or complex gameplay, and is just there to have you smiling the whole time. There are tons of games like that, and this will not be the only one that I check out in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. It feels good to be doing this again. I'm already hard at work on the next episode here at Judge Mathas, just kind of getting back in the saddle again. But if you want to go above and beyond and support this channel more than just throwing your views my way, which is plenty, mind you, you can also check out my Patreon link below. There's all kinds of neat little reward tiers there, Q&As, Discord, early viewing, scripts, and spoilers. We've got a lot of new stuff coming to the Patreon in a few weeks ahead. So if you want to jump in early, do so now, and I look forward to chatting with you guys over on the Discord. And if not, thank you guys just for being here and watching the show. Just you watching means so much to me. I love you guys. It's good to be back, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. go.